Hello, and welcome to How to Mahou Tsukai, the Minecraft anime magic mod. My name is Lorthorn, and I'll be walking you through this 1.18.2 Java edition of the mod by Stepcross. You will also be able to find more versions of this mod just by going to the mod page. Links will be in the description. But without further ado, let's get into how to do this epic anime magic mod, Mahou Tsukai. We'll get started the way most mods get started, by making the guidebook. The guidebook for Mahou Tsukai is made with red dye, leather, and paper. This is your guidebook to the rest of the mod. You basically open it up, and it will tell you everything you need to know, going through all the lists and guides and various things, and laying out for you in a simple format. So next, after you've crafted that book, you want to make yourself the dagger. The dagger is made with purple dye, iron ingots, gold, and a stick. You lay those all out, you get the dagger. Then, after you've made your dagger, you want to make the pestle next. It is created with 3 diamonds and 2 sticks. Then you want to, of course, make the mortar, which is 2 bricks and 1 diamond. Then you combine both of those together, and you get the mortar and pestle. Once you've gotten these important things done, we can move on to creating the next thing you'll be needing, which is a tuner. This is a weird ring of gold and lapis made as such from those ingredients. And when you have this ring completed, you can either combine it in any crafting table with diamonds or emeralds. Diamonds make stronger attuning gems, whereas emeralds don't store quite as bit. Regardless of this, however, you want at least one of them. Then with these completes, we head downstairs to the next thing, which is of course resources that you'll be needing. You'll be needing some iron, some gold, several emeralds, more than you'd think, about 3, a few diamonds, and a whole lot of quartz. You can also get a few ender pearls and a few Eye of Ender, but they're nowhere near as necessary as the quartz and the emeralds. Then, taking these objects, you can put them into a crafting table with a mortar and pestle, and they shall be crushed into their powdered form. Powdered emerald and powdered quartz. There are a lot of different kinds of powder, but those don't really matter with the whole mortar pestle situation besides the emerald and the quartz. Once you've collected all that powdered quartz and powdered emerald, all you need to do then is find a suitable location, take out your dagger, and right click with this. This will deal damage to you, and then you press the lay rune hotkey, which is set to M for me, and you will get one of these red circles laid on the ground. To set this for yourself, in case it is an M or you want it to be on a different key, all you have to do is press escape, go into options, go into controls, go to key bindings, then scroll down through until you find Mahou Tsukai. Then here is where all your hotkeys for the mod will be set, and you just have to click and press the appropriate key that you want to use for that hotkey. Now, with this ring on the ground, then you want to take 3 emerald powder, and you want to fill it with those emerald powders. This will create this magic cool looking spinning circle, and this is your alchemical exchange catalyst, which basically is how you get all the other powders without having to mine the resources for them. Simply all you have to do is once you have it going, you throw the powder into the circle, and it will burn 50 mana, and then convert the powder into a new powder at random. This allows you to get all other powder types without having to mine for their raw resources. Once you have that complete, you might also want to acquire yourself a sheep farm. Use this to get wool, and then combine the wool with the dagger in an inventory to get 4 spell scrolls, which are very, very important to you. However, the importance is overshadowed by how expensive that conversion catalyst is for the alchemical exchange. And so, one of the best ways starting out to get yourself more power is with a durability exchange circle, which requires diamonds and emeralds to create. The durability exchange circle is placed atop of chest, such as this one. So, you simply use the dagger and place the circle of blood upon the chest surface. Then you take 1 diamond powder, 1 emerald powder, and another. You place those all together, and you get the durability exchange. Now, the durability exchanger is immensely practical for getting you mana, and how it does it is it takes already existing items with durability and destroys that durability to give you mana. So here it has burnt this shovel down to a nubbin and refilled most of my mana. And then once my mana is full, it stops. Then using these gems we've created, we can pour our mana into it and they act as a battery. So now we can have the 2 gems as a battery force, and I'll start tearing the durability yet again out of these items, and then we can store it into our gem. And doing this will not only give us a battery, but also create our max Mahou, and you can have multiple of these going at once, which will produce an inordinate amount of mana for you. You can even put multiple circles on top of the same double chest. Then filling them all up and having all that mana convert will get you into a very good spot. Once you have a tuned gem about halfway full, the diamond kind or the emerald kind completely full, then I'd reckon you have enough mana to proceed from there. And that procedure is going on to creating several new items. These items will make magic way easier for you to perform. The main one we're concerned with is the first sorcery, or the Mystic Code for Sorcery. Unfortunately, Mystic Code for Sorcery costs Fae Essence, and we do not know how to get that at this point. But it is actually a relatively easy substance to get, if a little bit annoying. To get this wonderful magical substance, we'll first want to make ourselves a new spell and use the spell scroll for this process. Spell scrolls are placed on the ground, then you use your knife and complete the process like just putting on the ground normally. Then once the spell scroll is completed on the ground, you fill it up with the required ingredient. This being powdered ender eyes, and 3 of them. All 3 of them together can then be collected up into a spell scroll. And this spell that we've created is Mystic Eyes of Fae Sight. Then we are going to take this outside, and we are going to use it. Using it will grant you 30 seconds of Fae Sight, which will allow you to see ley lines and also the Fae, those little floating balls of light. Now these little creatures, unfortunately you want to murder. However, they are attracted to you doing magic, and more of them will be summoned to the ley line by you performing magic in their area. You can also breed them if you wish to have a greater amount of them by feeding them magic powder. And this will help get their numbers up so you can harvest them. This will take some time, but then you just kill them and you get Fae Essence out of the deal. And you need just about 2 to get the job done, and then you will have the power required to make the first coda. But a little note on ley lines before that. Ley lines are places of power, and they will regen your magic faster than normal, especially if you do your rituals and sleep near them and have your whole setup in the center of one of these big ones here. So it's a good idea to not get too committed to your magic spot before too long, to find one of these big ley lines and put the center of your magic and power around them. And ley lines have yet another purpose if you happen to have elytras. And this is a very cool thing. Ley lines are basically magical highways for elytra users. They give you a boost, much like a firework does, if you fly along them. Very cool. Now back to the magical workshop. You have the Fae Powder, Fae Essence, and so you can now create First Sorcery, Magic Code. And why this thing is so important is scrolls are a little bit expensive and annoying to make, and using one of them uses it up forever. However, if you shift or right click with the first Mystic Code, Sorcery Maduber, you can put one of those scrolls into it. Then you can press Y to circle and select it, and instead of using up the scroll, it uses up Mystic Code First Sorcery's durability to cast the spell instead of casting it through the scroll, which is excellent value for money. Now so far, mana production has been pretty good, but it can be better through the use of a new sorcery, Geese. Geese is performed by putting a spell cloth along the ground, cutting yourself with a dagger, putting the blood into it or Fae Essence. Then you wish to put golden powder, iron powder, and emerald powder into it. Collect up with a right click, put inside the Mystic Code, cycle around to the spell Geese, and then cast it upon entities you plan never to kill. Because what Geese does is when you cast it on an unnamed mob within the game, it binds your soul to theirs, making it so you can no longer hurt that kind of creature. But it also gives you a passive mana regen that is actually at a pretty decent rate. And this stacks, so the more things you have Geese, the faster you regen your mana. And you'll be surprised that there's actually a lot of creatures within Minecraft that you can Geese yourself to without actually much adverse effect, as you don't need to kill those creatures. That can be bees, or cats, dolphins, basically Geese all non-hostile mobs besides chickens, cows, and wolves, and you shall be set. I especially recommend Geesing the zombified pigmen, actually particularly useful, as casting this on them will make sure they'll never attack you. Then at any point you can check which creature you are magically bound to by casting the Geese on no target, and I'll let you all know all the creatures that you happen to be Geesed and that are giving you mana. But why stop at vanilla creatures, as there are plenty of mods that add other animals to the games. And so, getting a different mod, let's say like Alex's mobs, you could then bind yourself to a blobfish. Who doesn't want to be bound to a blobfish? And basically any other number of creatures you add to the game. Sure not to bind yourself to aggressive mobs, and then your power regeneration will be ludicrous. And if you ever want to kill the thing for whatever reason, you can just Geese it again, and that will remove it. Now, we have a way to produce mana excessively fast. We have some simple storage devices. We have some simple first spells. We know how to do everything. Another storage device is the Magitech Mana Circuit. This funky looking thing, you can put it down, you can turn it on, you can store your own mana in it, it'll fill the thing up, and then it can be a giant mana battery. You can also draw mana out of it using your Toon Gem. It will suck it up and store it in your Toon Gem. They're great. Excellent way to store mana on the gold, have a huge storage capacity, and they're relatively cheap, just taking emeralds and iron, but since you can turn emeralds basically into anything you want now, or, well, anything into emeralds using your exchange if you have enough patience, resources aren't a problem. So now, with all this production and mana stuff out of the way, let us create an actual fun item to play with. And that's going to be a ritual that requires a spell cloth. On the ground, you need to fill that sucker up with some of your blood. Then 2 gold and 1 powdered ender on it. And you pick that thing up, and it'll give you the Scroll of Spatula Distortion, or Spatial Distortion, but I prefer saying spatula because I like saying things wrong. And then you cast it, and it will give you the Mystic Staff of Spatula Distortion. And this is your first and greatest magic item. This item allows you to attack things that you're even Geesed to. So these pigs, we're Geesed to them, we can't hurt them. We're going to run up to them, we're going to try and punch them with the staff. Look, we can't deal any damage to the pigs. But if we right-click with the staff, it'll draw on our mana, and it'll create this funky looking circle thing here. And then we can send whatever we wish into orbit using that funky looking circle thing, and they will travel in that direction. It uses up a bit of mana, and then just boop, and it moves the thing over. You can grab mobs, you can grab players, basically any entity you can grab with this. But wait, there's more. And I bet you are wondering, well, why do these pigs have saddles on them? If you wish to fast travel, then you can put a saddle on a pig. You can grab it with the staff of spatula, spatial displacement. And you can launch yourself and the pig, and worry not about fall damage, as you can catch both yourselves with the staff, and it stops you exactly in space. For anything caught that's flying through the air with the staff will be held in place, besides players, until you wish to move it again. And so, a way to travel exceedingly quickly across the lands is by using this staff. And then landing is simply a matter of finding a bottle of water, finding a body of water, or being very confident with your technique. Then you can remount the pig once you've landed, and you can go on another adventure to wherever you wish to go. And, well, it's just great. That's the most I can say about it. It's just great. Now we've made a fun magic toy, we've bound ourselves to get infinite magic, we can fast travel. So, a little bit more into the nitty-gritty detail of this mod and all of that good stuff. First, we're going to talk about 2 decorative blocks. I know everyone's favorite thing is decorative. Well, maybe not, but it is for me. The first of these is the fog projector. Now, this block actually has a really interesting property, which is if you put in an item frame, it's invisible. However, if you look through a wall, you can find it, which is pretty nifty. But they do a little bit more than be a good place to put things down. They also make fog. You put one of these bad boys down on the ground, you go inside it, you fiddle with the various different options to your heart content, such as number of particles produced, and then it will produce a vape cloud that will slowly expand in size depending on the settings and will blind everything and lower your FPS. Oh my goodness. Okay, we do not want to be producing 100 of that type of particle. But enough of the fog machine for now. Let's get to the Mahou projectors. And these put down these circly magic, mystical, I have no idea what this is. And these are also modifiable and you can do a whole bunch of things to them. Like make it red and at a jaunty angle. You can also bind items to it by right-clicking the item on the projector, and then it will apply that effect to the item. When you wear those items, it will then project at the relative location set on the projector onto yourself, the circle, and it'll keep it relatively moving to the item. So the helmets, actually you can create something that moves where your head moves, and with the armor, it moves with the armor, and so it'll stay pretty solid to your body with your flying. And so you can do a bunch of pretty cool things with this, and I'll leave those to you to find out and explore for yourself. Now let's show off the properly constructed fog projector and the Mahou projector that I set up earlier, which create a really cool looking image outside the front of my base. And you may recognize this from the thumbnail of a pretty epic looking castle with that magic circle flowing behind us, the light on top. It just looks really cool. You can also toggle these things off with redstone signals, which is a very nice thing to have as well. So you can just go bam, and it'll turn off the smoke cloud. And then you don't have to worry about having a bunch of foggy smoke about unless you wish to activate it with a redstone signal. On to more practical things than what is fun and magical looking. Let's start with magical barriers. Magical barriers can optionally be produced with spell cloths, but they don't have to be. They can just be put on the ground. And the first magical barrier we are going to be creating is the alarm barrier. This is created with 2 iron powder and 1 quartz powder. Then it can be activated by right-clicking on it and it will constantly drain mana. However, it will let you know whenever a creature has entered into its radius. A husk has entered your boundary. A husk has entered your boundary. And it'll tell you players and all sorts of things. So basically, constantly sending to you a signal as a rudimentary defense to let you be aware of what's going on in your area. It can also be stored in a scroll format for quick deployment later by putting it on the ground when you need it put on the ground, and then you can have this barrier running. Then you can shut the barriers off by right-clicking on them, and it'll turn the barriers off completely. After that barrier, we have a boundary, and they're actually all called boundaries, but I'm going to be mixing and matching them with the mouse. This next boundary is optional of cloth as well, and this is a displacement boundary. Boundaries follow a principle of usually using about 2 iron and then another component. This one's component being ender pearls. Then you set that up, and whenever your entity walks through the barrier, such as when a juicy creature is there, it will be teleported to the other side of its location, thus making all projectiles and entities incapable of getting within your barrier. After the placement barrier, we have the tangible boundary or tangible border. This is created through 1 diamond and then 2 iron. Scrolls are also optional, and this creates a physical yet invisible boundary for all creatures except you and things that you have contracts with, which are usually other players. And as you can see, there's actually this little magical boundary. And if we were to summon a husk, he can't walk through it. He can't get to us but we can walk through, hit him, and then we can run through it again and go, he can't get us. However, be a little bit careful with them on servers. They have been known to cause a small amount of lag. And they do drain mana constantly, but luckily we produce infinite mana so we don't even notice. Next, we move on through the glacier on this carved path. And down we go to where the rest of our magic tutorial doth in lie. And the next is another boundary. This one, scroll optional as well, is the enclosed boundary. And by placing 3 iron into it, it will activate a physical wall around you of stone. After that boundary is the gravity boundary. Gold dust and 2 iron. This creates the gravity boundary. And everything within this boundary will experience increased gravity, making it hard for them to jump. They fall a lot faster. They will slam the ground at their players as well. And flying things will find it more difficult to fly up and will also be dragged down by your gravitational boundary. After that, we have the boundary of life drain, and this is a very practical boundary. Having several of them or just one of them set up can be very useful for you. This boundary, when placed with 2 iron dust and 1 emerald dust, will activate to create a boundary of death for everything but you. This boundary will kill mobs and turn them dying back into health for you. So it will slowly heal you up. And then when you're done healing, it will also start turning into mana, making an excellent arena fighting spot for you. And that's it for the boundaries. Next, we have a very fun little spell, which is called Ascension. And this is basically an elevator. You create this by putting gold dust first, then 2 ender powder. And it'll create the Ascension spell. This has the option of being scrolled, and at first it appears to do nothing. The husk doesn't do anything. When knocked over it can just walk freely. But if there's an object above it, then whatever is put on it will be teleported up above it. And in scroll form, it can simply teleport you to what's above you through just using it, so you can instantly get out of a tunnel that you happen to be in. So quickly get out of mines and various other situations. If you get lost and you're a little confused, boom, you can go straight to the top by casting it through scroll form. After Ascension, we have Protective Displacement. Protective Displacement is a spell created through 1 iron powder and 2 ender powder. You may have noticed a pattern that we're now doing displacement type magic, and it must be in a scroll form. This spell applies an effect to you, which is an amount of charges, and it makes you act like an enderman. So whenever arrows or projectiles come your way, you will instead teleport out of the way of them. On the flip side of that, we have the spell of Projectile Displacement. Projectile Displacement is created through 1 diamond and 2 emeralds, and when you drop back a bow and fire an arrow, and the arrow lands, then you cast this scroll, and you'll teleport to where that arrow hit. After that, we have Order Displacement. That is, no scrolls required. Then you put 3 ender powder on the ground, and it'll create an order displacement circle. The order in which these circles have been placed is the order of which you'll teleport around on them. And you stand on it, and it'll teleport you from location to location. Shifting will get you off the crazy ride, and it'll teleport you from one to the other as long as they're loaded and the range seems excessively low, but you can use it to teleport about your base rather quickly in assembly line sort of fashion, from room to room to room, or you could probably make a train out of them, but it does cost mana every single teleportation, so it's not the cheapest quick travel system. They're a little bit odd to use. Then there is Equivalent Displacement, which is done through 2 ender powder and 1 emerald, and that will displace you as long as it's someone else along the line. Now you also have to bind the circle to a different circle of exchange, and then as long as there's someone else on the other side of the 2 bound circles, you will teleport to the other side. So it has to be another person, so it can be players, it can be villagers, you can leave a villager there, basically do your free teleportation, what have you, but you have to bound it from spot to spot. You can also equivalently exchange items between two of these spots. And after that, we have Mental Displacement. This is done through 1 quartz and 2 ender powder, and it requires a spell scroll, and then they will create the scroll of Mental Displacement. You cast the spell, and it'll launch you outside of your body, and it'll give you a limited range of which to fly about within. You can travel through blocks with it, and so you can do some world hacking using this spell, and basically puts you into spectator mode up to pretty limited range, but still has its uses of quickly looking through walls or the surrounding area, getting a bird's eye view, so it can be useful in that preview. Then after Mental Displacement, we have the spell of Scrying. Scrying is a spell that lets you spy upon named targets. How you do it, if it's a player or if it's a creature that has been name tagged, you then create a name tag of them with their exact name. Then you take 1 powdered eye and 2 powdered ender, and you throw the name tag on top of the circle, and it will give you a 3x3 of their location and what's going on with them, to an extremely limited extent of not showing you what creatures are with them, or any more information besides the very limited that you have seen. That's Scrying. Now we have the spell Strengthening. Strengthening is right out of the Fate series. Fate Stay Night is the only spell that idiot really knows how to cast. It has to be cast with a spell scroll, and it requires 2 diamond, 1 iron, and then whatever is in your offhand, or if you don't have anything in your offhand, your leftmost inventory spot, when cast, it shall make that item unbreakable and strengthened. Now that unbreakable and strengthened both are sort of like after about 3 hits with it, but it makes it so it will not use its durability whatsoever. And hits with this object, even if it's not a normal sword, will deal more damage than normal. So this is dealing 2 per hit, where normally it deals nothing. And my fist barely hurts this thing, but the strengthened bow was dealing about 2 per hit. It actually considerably strengthens your power. And this spell is used in tandem with a lot of other spells, like the next one we have here. Projection is the next spell, and this is a bit of a weird one. So it requires 2 diamond, a spell scroll, and a quartz powder. Then it copies another weapon that you've targeted with the scroll and will summon for you a version of that weapon with about 4 durability. And then you can cast Strengthening on it, and makes it unbreaking, and it hits harder than normal. And then you can get a few more hits out of it before it starts taking that damage. Now Projection combines with yet another spell that we happen to have. Weapon Projection. This is gold powder and 2 diamonds. And this makes the Scroll of Weapon Projection, which when cast will summon Bow of Weapon Projection. And this bow fires weapons and items in your inventory as deadly arrows. Now, in creative mode, the ammo is not used up, but in non-creative mode, it will launch a sword and you'll lose it from your inventory, unless you happen to have a scroll of projection on you, and then you can change the weapons mode to projection mode, and then it will fire the projected scroll weapon instead of using up the important items in your inventory. Proximity Projection is our next spell. This requires 2 diamonds, a spell scroll, the circle, and 1 ender dust, and this will create a scroll of proximity projection. Then when we cast it, it will summon for us Crimson Black Keys of Proxima, and these are items that will teleport you to whatever target you click on, and you see those little reticles appear around them, and then you will teleport to that target as long as you can actually attack it. And it also has considerable knockback, and they are a nasty high damage dealing weapon that can also have strengthening cast on them, and you can basically be a teleporting god of death with these things. The next spell we have is Reality Marble. This spell requires a spell scroll, a little bit of your blood, and then 3 diamonds, and this will create the scroll of Reality Marble. This scroll will take you and its target into the Reality Marble. This giant plane That's all empty. And you must duel to the death with whichever target you've brought in for either of you to get out. And this place also happens to be filled with magical weapons, which are the ultimate blade work weapons, such as these Swords of Sharpness. And then using the projection scroll, you can memorize them. And it's a big empty plane that sometimes acts as a dungeon. And it's a good little arena that you can trap people in. And if you have means to teleport, then you can throw someone inside it and teleport out. However, if you yourself are trapped inside it, and you don't have an opponent to slay, and so I just take damage, and it'll fling me back outside the reality marble. But it's a different dimension, so you can build structure in there and do a whole bunch of fun stuff with it. It's a very cool little place. Now we are going to create a magical lake using 2 diamonds and 1 emerald. 2 diamonds and 1 emerald, and we start the ritual, and it will consume the area. Also, it consumes a lot of power. More details inside the book. And then you get this horrible murky-looking lake, which is the holy magic pond of the Lady of the Lake, and this is the lake of power condensation. And it'll get more until what it does later, but right now you can just summon this lake and you can make bodies of water to grieve people with. Please don't do that. Okay, next we have Treasury Projector, and that is made with Ender Eye and 2 diamonds on a scroll. And you pick that up, and it will create the Treasury Projection Gauntlet. This bad boy here. And this has a bunch of different modes you can do. It can shoot out the holy chains to imprison and slow targets and repel them, have them trapped inside. It has the AoE mode, which will summon weapons within your inventory and fire them. It's kind of hard to see, but it fires them from behind you. Random weapons, so if you have a good variety of diamond and high damage weapons, then I'll fire those all out. And it has target mode, which will lock onto your target and attempt to fire the swords from all angles around at them, although its accuracy is somewhat to be desired. But you can basically be Gilgamesh with his access to the treasury of Babylon, but if your target keeps on moving, it becomes rather difficult to hit. It's still a very fun little thing, and you can trap entities within it, and if you hold it down, it actually makes it so they can't go anywhere anymore, and that's a very powerful application of the Treasury Projection Gauntlet. Another fun thing to create is the spell Shared Pain. Now this spell is a bit of an oddball. So basically what it is you get on a spell scroll, you apply 2 gold to it, and you apply 1 emerald powder, and it gives you the spell of Shared Pain. Now you can cast this on any target you so please. I'm going to create an Iron Golem. Now this Iron Golem is a pretty big fellow. We then take the spell of Shared Pain, we bind yourself to him, it consumes it, uses up mana, then any damage I take, he'll take as well. Any damage he takes, I will take. Any effect that is applied to him will apply to me as well. So if we drink the potion of regen, we both get regen. If we drink the potion of weakness, we both get weakness. If we both drink the potion of harming, we both get harmed. I died, he didn't, and now we are no longer bound, as one of us has died. But what if I was to tell you that this scroll, with the combination of 1 other mod, can instantly kill any target in the game, as long as you're willing to die too. So, Iron Golems have way more health than me. Way more health. But if we use Immersive Engineering, a Tesla coil, a little bit of HV wiring, connect that line up, and there's our golem up there. We get out a screwdriver. Then we can set this thing to inverse. It'll shoot electricity damages at the same time. And if we shift right click, we'll interact with the primary circuitry of a running Tesla coil. And then that is an effect that is called death. And we shared that effect with the Iron Golem. Thus, it instantly died from our meddling and pain sharing. And this spell works not only on Iron Golems and other such creatures with more health than you, but also the Elder Guardian, the Ender Dragon, and Withers. And what's fun about this is if you happen to have a death protection poppet or other means to have multiple lives, then you can instantly kill your targets and not die at the same time. Thus, if you are somehow to have death protection, like a voodoo puppet of some sort from, let's say, Bewitchment, and then to do this, it would destroy that puppet, kill your target, and you'd get off scot-free. But enough of creative application of mods, let's get back into the nitty-gritty grind. And with another, fun spell. This one is the money one. Requiring 2 gold powder and 1 diamond. This creates a scroll of explosive mana condensation. Takes a lot of mana to cast this, but when you do, you get this red staff, and you may recognize it as Megumi's staff, or whatever her name is. And this is the closest thing I could find to her hat on short notice. Anyways, this staff lets you do some fun stuff. Let us say there is an annoying new village that has moved in next to you, and you don't want it there anymore. Well, you take the staff, and about 5,000 mana you have stored up, and you hold down right-click with it, and it will summon this terrifying beam of light from the sky, and once it's fully charged, you then release! And you summon a massive magical explosion, which I think I cast on the surface of something, so it wasn't all that devastating. But if we cast it a little bit lower down, cast it again, there we have the crater! And there's a lot more building eliminated, and if you can cast it inside the thing you wish to target, such as the base down there, then bam, bada boom, completely annihilated. Also, if you shift right click with it, it has different modes. This is by far the most drain mode, AoE mode, and this summons these fun little things, which will basically shoot these magic missiles that act as TNT explosions, and it drains a lot of magic. And then my favorite mode is beam mode, which is a great way to burn a lot of mana very quickly. This mode summons this, which then fires this beam, which does have a limited range, I'll grant you, but it cuts through anything besides bedrock. Now this thing, unfortunately, deletes drops, so if things happen to drop like those beds and then we glide over it, it will delete those. It consumes everything. If you blow up a treasure chest, it will consume that treasure chest, and it doesn't leave any of the blocks behind, so be careful with your magic beams. But if you want to very quickly carve out an underground area, and you don't care about the consequences, you can just beam it up, baby. Then once you have appropriate space beamed out, you can switch to a big explosion, and boom, bada bing, baby, you have a whole lot of nice area cleared out. We also could do with a creator, we just charge that up. And boom, yeah, we got another nice crater there, Cut the landscape a little bit. It's out this way here. You could carve it a bit more, so just over here. Sorted. And then peak maturity has been achieved. This next spell is just 3 gold in a scroll, and it is the Scroll of Borrowed Authority, and this basically turns you into the Hulk. So, be careful when using this, because you cast on yourself, you have Borrowed Authority, so it makes you rather fast, and your punches send things through walls, and it will destroy other people's land. And so you don't cast it near their building projects, because you don't want to destroy all their property. Yeah. Then if you want to be defensive instead of massively offensive like we have been, you can create Rose Aegis, which basically means a shield. And this is a spell you probably want to put into a projector, because it creates a giant force field. Now this force field consumes all projectiles and reflects them. Also, any entities trying to fly through this thing or move through it will be repelled. You can stack them on top of each other, and you can create a bouncy fun castle of doom for your targets, which, if you can get the curves right on it, means that you can basically make an area of internal bouncy hell for them, of which they cannot escape. You can travel through these things, so you can use it as a jump boost by summoning one straight up. Then if you happen to get through it, if you hold down shift, then you will fly through it yourself. And so, if you do it right, then you can actually make yourself the elevator out of these aces. And they will deflect projectiles, and basically anything that goes through them will be bounced about and prevented. They're very, very powerful shields. Now this next spell, this next ritual, this next scroll is a little bit complicated. So, bear with me with it. This is Cup of Heavens. This is meant to be the Holy Grail. Now, how the spell works is it requires gold and quartz. And basically what you do is you put down a whole bunch of blood circles all around the area. And then you put 2 gold and 1 quartz into each one of them. And it creates this horrible floating blue circle in the sky. And so we got another one there, and so they're overlapping with each other. Anyways, you do this a whole bunch of times, and you have a giant leggy sky circle of doom. Then you make a scroll version of the spell. Gold, gold, quartz cloth. And then you cast the spell in the center of your giant mess. And you've summoned a Lesser Grail. And activate Lesser Grail. You call that evil? Weak. Weak. And, yeah, it applies negative effects to the whole area below those circles, and I actually have no idea how it works, and if we actually go and reread the book... Yes, well, Cup of Heaven, the Grail, the most complex spell, and used primarily as a way to apply massive negative effects. When many of these circles are placed on the floor and activated by a scroll, the external convex polygon, Google gram scans, and I did, it made no sense, is calculated. The prime factor in the external polygons and those in the intended polygons determine the negative effects of all mobs and players within the external polygons at the time of the activation, receiving these effects based on the polygons. For example, if the pentagon is made of 5 of these circles, with 4 internal circles placed anywhere inside the pentagon, the affected mobs will receive Poison 2 and Blindness 1. Why? 4 equals 2 times 2. The prime factor 2 maps to poison, and the prime factor 5 maps to blindness. These prime factors go up to 13, including poison, weakness, blindness, slowness, wither, levitation. For a Cup of Heaven which grants poison 1 and wither 1, for example, you can simply create 22 side polygons, and all mobs inside it would be affected. Mana cost varies depending on the area of conversion. This debuff is nasty, and it lasts a really long time, and these circles floating in the sky will leg your game out. I really have no idea how the basis for this whole silly thing works, but apparently it does or something anyways. But now that we have all those horrible sky circles obliterated, we can get on to funner, more simple magic. Like this spell, requiring 2 powdered eyes and 1 gold powder, which will create the Scroll of Mystic Eye of Binding. And this is a cool little spell. When you cast it, it gives you the Binding Eye effect. And target that you have bound, by staring at them and they're looking at you, cannot move. Haha! Now if we look away, they should be able to move. But if we look at them, they can do nothing. Next spell follows this theme very much of 2 powdered eyes and 1 quartz. And this creates the Mystic Scroll of Clairvoyance, and this scroll is really cool. It lets you see the future. So mobs have movement patterns, and so it's going to show you exactly what it's going to do in these little red things here. But basically it lets you know where the thing's going to go. So we can see this mob is now planning to move towards us, and we know the exact path it's going to use to get to us. So it's basically showing us the AI's planned path for it. And so with this Clairvoyance, we can see what the simple, stupid mob is going to do, and thus plan accordingly for it. In my case, it's activating creative mode. Next spell, again, follows the pattern of eyes, this time using diamonds, however. And this is the Mystic Eyes of Black Flame, which will give us black fire to put upon our enemy, and wherever we look, we'll summon black fire. And this fire doesn't last very long, but you can actually stack these effects, so the more times you cast it, the more times you'll have it up. And so this black fire applies the wither effect and burning us awfully. Black flames are burning us away. Sheesh. shouldn't have stacked so many black fires on myself. Wait, are they spreading? No, it's just where I'm looking. Okay, good. After that, we're going to take a brief break from the eyeballs to create a spell that requires 1 gold, 1 diamond, and 1 emerald as the Scroll of Grenard. You definitely want to put this into your Mystic Coda, and this creates this horrible black orb of death, which takes how much mana power you have and how much power the target has, and fires out this exploding projectile that deals damage based on the difference. And this thing deals a lot of damage to whatever it hits. Now those things should be fine as we have them geezed, but the squids are not going to be so lucky. And also, if we happen to have the black fire effect applied to us, which is a negative effect, then we can use this and it'll fire out the effect and cause lingering on the ground and cleanse it from ourselves. So we can basically fire out our own curse and use it as a negative effect upon our enemies by firing out this powerful spell. This spell is a great area of effect killer, and we're going to need to kill some area of effects here, because the next spell is taking us back to the eyes, but this spell is called Scroll of Mystic Eye of Death Collection. And what this does is it applies this effect to you, called Death Collection Eyes. And anything that dies during your eyes are collecting deaths, so anything in your field of view that dies adds souls to your counter. And let's say we use Garda to kill all these chickens, then that will collect a bunch of souls for us. And now we have 14.25 souls in our collection. Now, these souls also drain mana equivalent to how many of them you have, so you want to have a lot of what are they called, geezes set up to make this actually run. This also kills a lot of fairies. Anyways, and then once you have all these extra souls, each complete soul counts as a spare life. So, we go into survival mode and we're about to die. Not today, Batman. So remember that combo that I told you about of the screwdriver into the electrical panel that can insta-kill anything? Combine those together, bam! Nothing's going to die. Now, it will use up 1 soul you have each time you do it, but it's still pretty good. Now, slash kill will still kill you straight through this, so you can't get away from it there. But thankfully, it doesn't use up any of your souls to get slash killed, so you can't have an admin slash kill away all of your souls. Drinking milk, I believe, will also remove your collected souls from you, so you have to be careful with that. If you want to get rid of effects that are negative, use Grenard to do that. Alright, next is Scroll of Mystical Eye Reversion. And this makes it so whoever is targeted by it loses all their buffs. If we cast Mystical Eye of Reversion, and we're looking at him, he no longer has his flame protection that Husks get because we remove that positive buff from him. So anything that you stare at, having these eyes, will lose all their positive benefits. So I believe Squid will start drowning, and players will lose all their buffs, and I think it can even remove extra souls, although I'm not 100% certain on that. But basically you strip someone of everything that's positive, and you steal it with this horrible, evil power. Now, 2 Powdered Eyed and 1 Ender will give you a Scroll of Insight. And Scroll of Insight lets you see what's going on with things. It lets you see other players' inventories, and it lets you see their buffs and debuffs. So these cows currently have nothing going on for them, but if we were to, I don't know, flash some stability on them, then this would show, oh, they have stability. You better look out, they got stability. So you can see all the effects that are on the creatures, positive or negative, and basically what's going on with them. Then, using a spell scroll and 3 quartz, we get the spell Summon Familiar, which will summon this cute little bird for us. And this bird will fly around and tell us what's going on with things. So he's just going to go little fly away, he's going to explore everything. So he'll just fly around the whole chunk and look at stuff and keep exploring, keep exploring. And so every once in a while he'll tell us tidbits about things he's seen. After that is 2 quartz and 1 emerald. This scroll lets you find stuff. Now, my familiar is on fire, so he's screaming, oh god, we teleport him back to us, and he's on fire now. And they aren't the politest of little creatures, the familiars. Okay. After that, 2 quartz and emerald creates familiar exchange. So if we summon our familiar yet again, then we cast familiar exchange. We exchange locations with each other. So he's over there, I'm over here, and we're like, let's switch good buddy, and boom, we switch spots of where we are. And the familiar actually loads chunks, which is kind of cool. So he will switch spots with you. Next spell after that is 1 gold powder, 2 quartz, and this creates the spell of shared vision. And whoever you cast on, it allows you to share vision with them, so you see what they see. Then 2 quartz powder and iron powder will create familiar garden. So if you summon our familiar back to us and we cast this spell, it'll create this little garden, and nothing can fight in this garden. So this garden is a zone that's coming off our familiar, and yeah, this effect means we cannot deal damage to things, we cannot hurt other players, they cannot hurt us. It's a great little spell to set up a meeting with someone, is have your familiar get to a location, and then you set up the garden, and that whole area is now no fight zone. This next spell is known as the butterfly effect. It takes 1 diamond and 2 quartz. After you cast it with the spell scroll, it applies butterfly effect to you. This makes it so basically all actions and interactions you have with the world, to a certain extent, don't actually happen, and are instead saved within these butterflies. So if I punch the air, then these butterflies appear instead, and my punches are stored for later. Now, if a creature then interacts with these butterflies, other than yourself, it activates them. A rather peculiar and buggy spell that, well, has some uses. It's kind of confusing and is more applicable in multiplayer. With creatures and them being short and not going through them, it just doesn't seem to entirely work. Now, enough on the butterfly effect and the weirdness of mana, for we have a new spell to play with. That spell requires 1 cloth, dagger with blood spilt, an iron, and 2 emeralds to create the Scroll of Damage Absorption. And when you cast the spell on yourself, it will give you 5 damage absorption. Whenever a creature hits you, it will still deal a minor amount of damage, but some of that damage will be converted into mana, and so it's a partial protection that also gives you additional mana for a limited amount of hits. This is kind of a poor way to collect mana, and I much prefer my shovel method. However, there is another method here which we are about to show you, for the production of many manas. Now, a different spell of getting mana is called Chronal Exchange. Chronal? Whatever. Anyways, it's 2 emeralds and 1 quartz powder, and then it will, when placed on the floor, the circle generates 12 mana for 12 hours, centered the time of the placement. For the other 12 hours, it will drain mana from the caster or mana circuits. It will drain or restore up to 10 mana ever so often, depending on how far away it is from its peak. Note that skipping time will only delay the cycle instead of skipping it. So yeah, this is a weird one. You don't need that one. Just do the durability exchange. Now, the next spell I was going to show you, but then editing, I decided, no, this spell's really, really boring. It just sucks. So a chemical exchange, we're just not doing. Then after that is the spell contract, which requires a second player, so I can't showcase that or tell you how to do that either. So moving on from that. So, after that is Immune Exchange, which is a spell that's put on the spell scroll. Powdered Eye, Emerald, and Emerald. It makes the Scroll of Immune Exchange. And basically what this does is, so it can be used on a player or something the player is looking at. Target of the scroll will take no damage from repeated damage sources, will take double damage from damage sources that was different from the last. And so now we have Immunity Exchange set on ourselves, and so it'll do that whole damage thing. And it's just like this random little buff. Our husky friend, going into survival mode, he'll hit us once, and now he no longer hurts us. So he's a damage source that no longer deals damage. However, then we go and take fall damage, that's going to deal a ton of damage to us. interesting little buff. After that is 1 diamond, 1 iron, and 1 emerald onto a scroll, and that will give you the Scroll of Retribution. And the Scroll of Retribution gives you retribution for damage. It's if you've ever played Dota, basically. So there's a hero in Dota, and his ult makes him exchange his health with his targets, Terrorblade. So Terrorblade basically has an ult which exchanges his health with a target. So now if we go Retribution, we get all of his health and he loses health equivalently. As a whole thing, it's based on the mana amount of health we had and lost and all that stuff. After the Retribution, we've got a very similar spell, which is 1 diamond, 1 iron powder, and 1 emerald. And that is the spell of Present Concealment. And this summons these daggers for you, the Rippers. Now the Rippers give you haste. You can dual wield them, and you'll attack with both of them. They deal a lot of damage. If you backstab with them, they deal double damage. They have a little target lock so you can find things. And they have a very cool effect, is if you're holding just one of them, it will generate this giant fog cloud, which makes it a little bit harder for people to see and legs out the game. Kind of cool. But if you have both of them, and you right click, it turns you invisible. And so your empty shadow's there, but your name tag isn't there, and like all the little particles. But so you can run around invisible inside one of these fog clouds and then backstab people with it. Every time you attack and hit a target, you will appear. But that's only when you've hit and interacted with the world, and then you can be invisible. And they're very cool items based off Jack the Ripper from Fate Apocalypse? It's when the 2 different people battle. It's from the Fate series, Fate's Day Moon, whatever you want to call that. Anime garbage. Then after that is 1 gold, 1 iron dust, and 1 ender. And this will create the Scroll of Fall Down, which has 2 modes. AoE mode, which makes the ground below all entities turn into the properties of sand and collapse into the empty spaces and sink underground. And it also has beam mode, which terraforms and destroys the landscape. And you should be very, very careful casting it, as basically everything will be turned into dirt, lit on fire, sand will be turned to glass, and it's just a whole mess. Next spell is on a scroll, and it's 1 powder dye, 1 emerald, and 1 endered and 1 emerald. And this will create the Scroll of Selective Displacement, which is an effect you cast on yourself, and then you need a unique hotkey to interact with it, which is the H hotkey, and it lets you switch places with your targets or have your targets switch places with each other. And it takes a little bit to figure out, but once you have it, it can be pretty fun to mess with. Next we have Cubaco. This is the process of having creatures fight each other to determine which is the most powerful, and then using that creature as an ingredient for your spells. However, this is done through horrible little worms, which after the creature has done a bunch of murdering, you use the worms to murder that creature, then burn it for power, or use it to curse people. Now the process of getting this can be done through having skeletons fight each other, or a far more efficient method is having a wolf eat some sheep. Now the recipe is fairly simple, just rotten flesh, netherworts, both varieties of potato that aren't cooked, a carrot and some dirt, and I'll make these awful little worms. So then with this horrible little worm creature, you go over to the thing that has the count, and you put it on, and then it will wriggle about. Then you cause damage to the thing. Then, now that it's a hostile entity, we put the Cubaco worm on the wolf. We trigger damage. The worm will start to kill the wolf. Then it'll kill the wolf. We pick the worm up, and now it has the Cubaco count of 11 from the wolf. So it has to be hostile entity, so you make the wolf hostile entity, then you put the worm on, then you deal damage to the wolf, and then the worm will harvest it and give you Cubaco value. And then that's kind of useless besides 2 spells. So one spell is you curse people and get equivalent exchange, and the other, you head to where a ley line is. You put the Cubaco on the ground at the apex of a ley line. Then it'll give us considerably more mana. However, this method has appeared to be nerfed from its original strength, and so it doesn't give you nearly as much mana as I'd like, which is a bit of a shame. So the other methods shown earlier are more efficient than this. So then onto the other use of Cubaco is curses. Now these curses are done through what is called sympathetic magic. which talks about all about here. And how sympathetic magic works is you cast that rather useless scry spell on a target, do that over a test with Cubaco in it of a high count, then throw an object listed in the sympathetic magic curse list onto it, and apply new and terrifying curse effects onto those targets. The scry spell on him. So now we can see his location, and there's Cubaco in there. So now if we put the rabbit's foot on top, it'll curse him with hopping. Now this isn't a very powerful curse. A much more dangerous one that we could put on a target is the misfortune of Cubaco, which is once you've scryed a target and you have Cubaco inside as fuel, you then put Cubaco onto it as the curse catalyst, and as long as your Cubaco count is higher than a Cubaco in their inventory, they will get an absolutely nightmarish curse. Now applied to the villager, it doesn't look so bad, but when applied to me, it was hideous. This curse randomly tosses the target about, causes the duration of the inventory items to degrade, will make you drop items, will outright destroy items, and will cause a whole bunch of negative effects while striking you with lightning. A very bad Saturday afternoon. And now, finally, we'll go on to the magic weapons. Alright, the very first magic weapon has to deal with this lake of power condensation. And it is basically Caliburn, though it's called Caliburn. You take a diamond sword and you enchant it. Smite's the best enchantment. And then you throw it into the water. You need a lot of power. And then it'll create the Sword of the Lake based off the power of the enchantment on. So we have Caliburn with a cap of 1000 deals 12 damage. And so we've condensed the power of the sword, so it's actually a pretty good Whamma Jamma sword. So, Husks will get hit pretty hard by it. They want to run away from you. You can pull targets towards you with the sword. So, and if you press Y, and then you do the right click, it will smite them with holy magic. Now this sword only deals 12 damage, and it can actually get stronger. So if we go slash, enchant, Lorthorn, smite 5, sword has been enchanted against, now it's smite 5. Then we can throw it back into the lake, and it'll burn up 5,000 mana, and it'll recondense, and then it does 17 damage. And we can do this all the way up to 100 damage. However, that cap can be removed by taking nether stars, throwing them in first, then throwing in the sword. And that will give us a Caliburn with a cap of 150. And so, if we throw in all the nether stars, and we enchant the sword with smite 5 again, and throw it in, then we'll have a sword with a very, very high cap. And there's actually no maximum limit to this sword as long as you have nether stars. And you can make it deal thousands and thousands of damage per hit. Now you can also, through the use of commands, choose its limits and how much damage it does and remove caps and all that good stuff. Ender Dragon. That sword would instantly kill her. Also deals an area effect attack, so everything around it just dies. So yes, you can make these swords very powerful if you're patient and do tons of enchantment and just get smite immediately. However, you don't always get smite, but we might be able to change that. We'll get to that though in a moment of changing the chance of smite. So, insanely powerful sword. Anyone has it, that's ridiculously unfair. There's another very powerful sword you can make by taking Caliburn, and if you happen to have a dog who's your best friend, then you take Caliburn and you murder him with it. Its power will be based on the old Caliburn you had, but now you have the evil, vile sword Morgan. Now we're going to get a different Morgan to show some of the features of Morgan here. It deals only 4 damage. However, if you kill villagers while wielding this unholy sword, it will increase its damage by a very small amount, so you can actually get the damage much quicker on Caliburn if you have the XP. But let's say someone has this ridiculously unfair sword, and they're like, that's unfair they have it, I don't want them to have that. And whatever you do, they're always going to beat you. Well, you can change that. So, if you take a diamond sword, and you cast Strengthening upon it. So now it's an Unbreakable Strengthened Sword. And you go to the end, and you throw this Unbreakable Sword into the dragon fire. Nothing will happen. But if you right-click on it in the fire, then you create Clarent, which deals absolutely no damage. However, Clarent's damage is based on the damage that the target deals, and it builds up over time. So basically, once a target hits you while you have the sword in its block position, then all the damage that has been dealt to you will be put into Clarent and charged up for one big, very hard-hitting slap. And so if someone had this Morgaine of 1 billion damage, and you blocked it with it, then that would be charged into Clarent, and then you could hit back and absolutely ruin them. Clarent also has a second effect of any target that is hit by it. It will constantly deal damage to them until it kills them, or that's what it's supposed to do. Now if you hold down right click with Morgan, then it creates a dark orb which will slowly pull targets into it and steal their souls. Now another cool magic item requires a very special thing to make it. A stick! Yes. And if you strengthen the stick, then you hold it in your offhand, you get struck by lightning, it shall turn into the magic staff, Emerus, which, while held in the offhand, will call down a storm if you hold down right click, and it'll send lightning bolts striking randomly. But also, this staff versus thine enemies. Send out lightning at them from an orb, and when you wield a sword in your other hand, it will apply the lightning damage of the weapon to its hits. So it'll shoot out little bolts of lightning as well. So it's meant to be used in the offhand, so you can swing the sword and then deal lightning damage or call down lightning strikes with it. Very cool item. Then, if you happen to have the Jousting mod installed, you can take a diamond lance, enchanted with smite, and throw it into the lake of power condensation. And you can summon Rahulgamandigidiliga. And while this is a cool item, it is an add-on to the mod, so I was just making you aware of how to get it. You need the Jousting mod. And with that, we shall now move on to something else. And that is how to get a giant stupid black shield. Now to do this, you will need more than 15 points of armor. You'll need more than 100 souls collected. You'll need a shield to be in your far left corner. You'll need a scroll of strengthen. You'll need a scroll of damage absorption. And you will need a scroll of immune exchange. Cast all these scrolls upon yourself so that their max effect is applied and the shield is strengthened while wearing the armor. Then simply block an attack that is coming for you in your main hand with the strengthened shield, and it shall now give you a new item, which is Pleca, which is a very cool, very powerful shield. Now the shield can do several things. One of them is it basically negates all damage incoming on knockback and holds you in place when you press the shield down. Also, when you first hold the shield in front of you, it will send out a shockwave which will knock everything away from you and deal damage. If you have friends, then you can hold the shield in their direction and you'll rush in front of them to block attacks coming their way. You can also shift right click on the ground to remember a position, then you shift and press Y, and you just tap it and it'll teleport you back to that location along with a bunch of people with you. And when you take damage while holding the shield up, it will remember different damage types. You can press Y and then shift the shield to those damage types, and it'll make it so the shield doesn't even take damage from that attack and is completely resistant to it, as well as repels the attackers of that damage kind. And now onto the final item. And this is the doozy one. This item is called Rule Breaker, and a lot of people have absolutely no idea how it works, and explanations aren't great, but I'm here and now going to explain to you how Rule Breakers works and end this video for you on a rather interesting, I think, note. Alright, so Rule Breaker is crafted through a bit of a bizarre process of taking chorus roots, taking probability scrolls, and putting, what was probability? And putting gold diamonds and quartz on the ground. And so then you want to make a pattern, you want them all to be near each other. And then you put chorus fruit on top of each circle. You get down like a good amount of chorus fruit. And then you take the scroll of probability altar. You cast it near all these. And it'll absorb the chorus fruit. And based on the amount of chorus fruit that were eaten on top of each one, it will give you modules and divisions. And that's the Rule Breaker. And it deals basically like no damage. Well, it's actually alright damage. And it's just a kind of weird looking thing. Now, the Rule Breaker, you can shift right click to adjust its division of the module. So that module is 14. I have a rule breaker here with 24 division, and these alter probability. So Minecraft has occasional probability contained within the game. This probability rears its ugly head in different situations, so we're going to go through some of these situations that it goes through. So one of the more obvious ones that a lot of people know about is the enchantment table. So with the probability in an enchantment table, what you do is you choose a module. Let's say we're going to use this sword, and we're going to have a probability of 3. So now we do that, and it's 3 out of 25, so that's some divisions going on there, basically. So it's 3 divided by 24. It's not a whole number, so it's a fraction. So now we have the probability alter effect applied to us. Now, applying to us, yes. So we take one swords, and we throw them into the enchanting table, and we take this. So this is going to be knockback and sharpness 3. The next one is going to be sweeping edge, okay. And the next one's going to be sweeping edge, okay. And make sure our probability is still altered. Alright, so the next swords that I'm going to enchant are all going to be sweeping edge. So that's going to be a sweeping edge. That's going to be a sweeping edge. That's going to be a sweeping edge. And this one, guess what? It's going to be a sweeping edge because I've altered my probability. So the next sword after this will also be sweeping edge because it's once you've enchanted it, then checks your character for a random number based on you. Then it will do, well, it just looks for a random number very quickly. So probability alter is choosing the number is going to be 3 out of 24. So next one will be sweeping edge. But if I change things up a little bit here, so now we have 8 out of 24. So next one, sweeping edge. But now it is going to be fire aspect and knockback. And the next one will be fire aspect and knockback. And the next one will be fire aspect and knockback. And it will always be these things once you've figured it out. So 8 divided by 24 on a sword will be fire aspect and knockback when at level 23. And so the enchantment is set after you've enchanted the last one. And so you can basically figure out how to permanently have a probability altered. Now, where else can this be used? Well, there's some actually really interesting ways to use this. Because it also applies the probability effect to mobs you kill. And mobs have random numbers based on what they drop into spawn. 224. These cows are going to give me 2 leather and 2 meat. So, 224, 2 leather, 2 meat, XP. 2 leather, 2 meat, 2 XP. 2 leather, 2 meat, 2 XP. I set it to 0. Then these zombies are going to give me what their rarer drops. Iron ingot. Bam. Iron ingot. Put down all these zombies. Each one of them is going to give me an iron ingot. Guaranteed. Because I've set the probability upon killing them. You can also have one final one, which unfortunately is very, very, very buggy. And every time I've done it, it's crashed the game. So let's get a smoker. So smoker. Alright, so we get smokers. And then we get villagers. I don't know if it's the random number of my dagger or what. But anyways, we're going to set a module for 2. So we're going to go 7 on this thing. So it should be set to 2. Alright. So it's divided and it equals 2. And then we spawn a villager in here. We hit him. Spawn a villager. We hit him. And now he has probability applied to him. Then we put down a smoker. He becomes a cook. And the game crashes. And this is just a current bug with Mahou Tsukai. It doesn't have anything to do with mod combination or anything like that. It's just a bug where the dagger rule breaker breaks the villagers, then breaks the game. One of the final random things that we can find is this staff, when put into the offhand, calls down lightning at random points. So if we just go / effect clear. Right, so we use the staff, boom bada bing, lightning starts falling about randomly. We apply a rule break, call down lightning, and it's all going to happen in one relative spot, still relative to me, so I can move forward slowly with it. So, if we happen basically, even if it's behind me, basically you can X mark the spot, and then annihilate something with that. But besides that is basically the extent of Rule Breaker. Puts random values to things. And that is Mahou Tsukai. So, some of the other mods that I used there, just so you know, the teleportation was done through waystones. These buildings were generated through prefab. I, of course, had JI, and I had Wildfire's Gender Mob to give me the ridiculous anime chest there. And all these emotes are being done via Quark. And how I got all of those extra mobs is Alex's mob mod, and it just adds, well, a ton of new animals to the game, so you can stack it up to get even more things to have there. And yeah, that's that, I guess. The anime magic mod extravaganza is complete for everyone. Mahou Tsukai, covered, documented, rule breaker is explained at the very end of the video. If someone wishes to volunteer their lifetime to timestamping this, that'd be great. I'd very much appreciate that. I might do it myself, in fact. But as it stands, we'll leave it there for today. If you want me to cover any other mods, just let me know. Probably won't have the ridiculous swinging anime physics for those. I just thought it was appropriate for this one, but I think I'm not going to have that just randomly. Okay, yeah. So, until next time, I'll catch you then. And thank you very much for watching. Goodbye!